reasonable from the lecture and from the reading. It's not like asinine little guesswork trivia stuff that seems to get at like things that were significant from there. And any, you good with it? With that? I don't want to just have a trivial pursuit, and I don't want to be playing a game where I try to goof your grade. All I want is to build in something that's an incentive to be looking at the material, a reminder, and to keep people on track. Because just coming and listening, you can find people that are better at saying more important things all over YouTube than what I have to say. You know, that's going to be true for any teacher or pastor or anybody that you find. There has to be some sort of engagement. Otherwise, there's no point when you can find so much better at your fingertips, on your phone, in the bathroom. It behooves you to get the most out of the experience, to work it. And I know clearly, I know painfully, that there are many people that at a school like PUC in this era, it's an interesting factoid and mostly an annoyance or a nuisance that it's even a liberal arts school where you come to say, because I just couldn't get into any other nursing program, so here I am. And you get these courses that are like, what the heck am I going to do with that? I strive to be aware that there's a spectrum of all the way from that to this is the one place in the world where I can study to be what I actually want to become. And for some of you, you're not here for any career purpose. It's not even that relevant to career. It's because you want to develop your mind and your heart. And so I recognize that spectrum, and I want to make it so that it's actually a value, even if it's surprising value to some of you. We left off on Monday speaking about some social aspects of not necessarily Christian spirituality, because it isn't always a part of Christian spirituality. Sometimes it's the very opposite of the way many Christians view Christian spirituality, but it is undeniably the core of the spirituality of Jesus in the Gospels. That is testified to by Steps to Christ. Throughout Steps to Christ, Ellen White is pointing to. Now, this is not an original with Ellen White. This is something that where Ellen White is just underlining what is throughout and which is thematic in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And that is that Christian spirituality, that Christ-like spirituality, is a matter of addressing sort of the default in our mind, in our life, where self is at the center. It is the kernel of sin to have self as the first priority. In non-Christian spirituality, in extra-Christian, not anti-Christian necessarily, but just outside of Christianity, where you have people that are engaging in practices trying to give themselves a mystical experience. Recall, and it was on the quiz today, in fact, two of you were given payment for the combined question about trying to transcend this sort of gnawing, nauseous commonness of life. The part of that causes people to go to extreme measures to really prioritize when they don't get a dime back from it it doesn't never put any more time in their life either, to try to prioritize transcending this blah, is that the blah is about life that doesn't seem like being alive. It's like fitting into the structures that other people create or that society creates that make you a machine instead of a woman or a man. Instead of a miraculous person. Instead of a personal miracle. I mean, you have a sense, we all do have some sort of a sense, that we know inside that we have miraculous things going on that are even just part of being. Even just the fact that we're able to see through our eyes and have a real life experience with real life choices to make, that any one of us, for really terrible or for really good, any single day could dramatically change the world. Any of us, any day, could dramatically change the world for horribleness or for serious goodness. Any day we simply choose. And that, we know it. It's a little bit, most days, like, I could if I want to, but I'm holding back. You know, I could come in and be a terrorist, but I'm holding back. One of the other going to get theirs, but today I'm letting them off the hook. Yes.
I would say it's easy to change the world in a really bad way really quickly. What would you say is a way to change the world for good really quickly, like within a day?
You know what a fractal is? Like the Mandelbrot series, right? Where something just branches, and then the branches look the same as the thing that branched ad infinitum. When you powerfully impact a single person, when you really impact a person, what you have done is not impacting one person. We recognize that, what was it, like 20 or 30 years ago, somebody said that there were maybe 7 degrees of network separation between any two human beings alive. Period. You know, when you look at LinkedIn and it says how many generations away or how many steps you are removed from some dude, you look at it and you go, oh, I'm 71 steps removed away. No, it does not say you're 71 steps removed away, does it? When you look at LinkedIn, it does not say 71 steps from this person. It'll be somebody you've never even thought of, and you're 3 people removed. We know now that it has shrunk to probably like below 5 or just above 5. Maybe we're going to get down to 4, that you know somebody, you have some association with somebody who has association with somebody who has association with somebody equals 7 billion. That's the nature of the connectivity today. And when you look at things branching out every way that they can, it's exponential. The connections between you and other people, when you go just a few generations, are exponential. They're not additive. It's not like I'm directly contacting 1,000 people, and then I contact you, so that gives me just 1,000 more, by second. It doesn't go like that. Each of the 1,000 gives me 1,000, that gives me 1,000, that gives me 1,000, and it keeps going. It keeps going. And you realize that the mathematics, and I apologize again, I'm sort of a frustrated mathematician when I'm doing other things, but it really is the language with which God has written reality. It just really is. And I can't get away from seeing God in our clearest, most undeniably honest way of reasoning that we have, the purest. It's simple-minded. Mathematics is simple-minded. It is. It just takes all the complexity out of it. People go, oh, it's so complicated. Not by Halam Shah. It's the very simple, pure way of oversimplifying the universe. But when you start doing things that go all different ways, or you start doing things just doubling. You've heard the illustration of the person who did something and made an emperor a happy emperor, and the emperor offered a reward and gave a choice to the person saying they could have, like equivalent of $1 million, or what they could do is take a chessboard. Chessboard has 64 squares. Take a chessboard and place 1 grain of rice on one of the squares. Then on the next square, you could double the grains of rice, and then you just keep doing that as you go until you get to 64 times that you double what was there before. Well, would you rather have $1 million, or would you rather have that much rice? The rice. Take the rice. Definitely take the rice. And if you had that much of any commodity like that, you would corner the whole world's commodity market for that thing. And rice happens to be one of the most, if not the most, important agricultural commodity. So right now in the world economy. And so you'd be 50 Bill Gateses and a Warren Buffett on top of it. So if you want to impact the world, Kelly, one person, you start their motor. When they're just idling, you just come by and you do something that sets them off, setting other people off, setting other people off, setting other people off. And it gets to be 7 billion in very few steps. I mean, you probably have some contact in a week with 1,000 people, especially with your new job. You're going to have hundreds a week. They're going to file through. Even if they're not ordering, they're with the people that are ordering, right? And then the people you just are with at the grocery store and all of that. And so if you could do something with one of them.
It's like the pay it forward idea.
The pay it forward idea is a powerful illustration of that, yes.
So couldn't it stop anywhere if somebody decides to not pay it forward?
Yes, but there's so many people in it. It has so much buffer, so much margin for error, that it just gets to be outrageous. Will it reach all 7 billion people? Usually not. But it could reach modestly 1 million.
Even if it's just touches one and then they don't pay it forward.
Well, but you don't just do one.
Oh,
We look at each one. So if you're having the ability to actually network with 1,000 people, I mean, shoot, you can post something on Facebook. I mean, if it's really thoughtful, you could post something on Facebook. It could be viral. Even if it's not viral, sometimes the feeling quality that you give or the life that you add to one person becomes viral, even though it's not a meme. It's not even really information, because we don't have language exactly without pages. If somebody says something to you that puts you on cloud 9 and puts you at the top of your game, and they can, you think about some of the most important things that people have ever said that make you just feel all that. The difference in your personhood from that point forward. In some cases, it's permanent. It changes your person forever. In other cases, it kind of wears off and you need another dose. But what if the way that you engaged went beyond the mundane? I mean, because somebody engaged with you, just had that one deal, it's just routinely a turning point for people to be behind you and line it safely. To get in passing as another motorist that you'll never meet, just in passing, something is transmitted to that person that makes them never the same. Have you ever had the look of a person, just the way they look at you, and you never exchanged words, but somehow that changed you? I'll be right back, Kelly.
Wouldn't you say that this would be the same example of true Christianity, what Christ did? I mean, he, talk about like an underdog type of scenario, just coming off the page.
Yeah.
It changed the world,
Yes,
and this is the whole pay it forward
that's right.
practice.
One goofy dude, I mean one sideways, backwards goofy dude, who went to a friend's cabin. See, he didn't work for a living even. He goes to a friend's cabin and spends it somewhere almost 2 years with his journal. Just talking about how crooked the world is in his journal and just observing stuff and avoiding everybody. I mean, avoiding everybody. And Thoreau produced a couple of things with his pen alone that went on to inspire Gandhi. And that was a critical point in colonialism having its back broken. That's huge. Not only did he inspire Gandhi, but then Gandhi and Thoreau inspired Dr. King. And then Dr. King and Gandhi and Thoreau inspired Nelson Mandela. And it just keeps going. And some of the things that you're watching happen now, people are using the methods that came from Thoreau's pen in a shack next to a pond, just kind of getting out of the rat race for a couple of years, not even contacting people. Some of the things you're seeing now with people who've been abused for too long, that are finding ways without having to be violent or hurtful or anything, are using the things that he said, and they're still bringing change that no matter how powerful people are, it's like, well, the toothpaste is out of the tube, dude. You're stuck with these changes. Kelly.
What is one thing that you personally have either witnessed or done that has had this effect, and like what is the largest effect you've witnessed from something like this?
What I'm doing right now, which is why this is my thing. Because I have people come back more than a decade later and say, one thing you said, and I made decisions, and now this.
Also, just kind of going back to the Facebook thing, a good illustration of it is in like 9th grade, me and my friend created this Facebook page and we invited all our friends. Within a day, 100 people had joined. Within a year, that 100 people became 20,000. It literally has that effect of this, you like like the page, and then all of your friends see you like that page. So the invitation is essentially sent out to all of them. And I bet every person in this room is somehow a friend of a friend of a friend, or even closer to that, to me on Facebook. Because we're all connected somehow on that network, and that's kind of
Exactly.
how it's like.
Exactly.
And it just branches out and out and out and out until it reaches the end.
People underestimate the incredible power that they had, not just for negative, because it's easy to blow something up. It's easy, you know, silliness that people think, oh, we're gonna take away your weapons, we're gonna do this and this. You can't. People have access to stuff. They'll just come up with the next thing. There's no avoiding how easy it is to release entropy. That's so easy. Somebody's working so hard to push something up the hill, and you just watch and just walk behind them and put one foot, you know, behind the other one on the next step, and it rolls over the top of them and goes all the way back down, and all you did was, you know, it's easy to unleash entropy. But it's also easy to infect something more or less with a viral spread for powerful good. Think of the difference between people that make you feel bad. However they do it. Maybe they're holier than thou. They just make you feel like you're never enough, you're not holy enough, you're wrong, you're not skilled, whatever it is about your specialness, they take the downside of that and remind you of it and just, you know, people like you. And then you go away feeling bad about being who you are. Now think about the people that when you come into their presence, they just somehow manage to lift you up and give you a push in the right energetic direction. I see in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, I see the person who's the best example of being able, no matter who, to get under their skin in just the briefest encounter. To totally get in there and get right in their business and change them irreversibly somehow. The life-robbing mechanization of human organizations has an upside even, if it causes people to be pushed just far enough in that direction that they say, you know what, I have to have some specialness, and then they look for it. And that prompts them to look for some kind of spirituality, some sort of specialness, some sort of, I will not have the life taken out of me by the systems or the people that are life-robbing kinds of people in my life, especially people with power. And that's everywhere. I mean, a homeless person that doesn't have, you know, enough to go get a cup of coffee can still look at you and say something, if it's thought well enough, that can reduce you to nothing, can make you feel terrible, or can make you feel wonderful. And make no mistake, feeling wonderful and valuable makes you powerful. And you can give that to anyone. That is not traditional Christian spirituality. But it is the center of the spirituality that Jesus demonstrated. Now, remember we said, you can't just rush in where people are dangerous and their spring is already tight and they've got like a hair trigger. You can't rush into places like that when you've got sort of underdeveloped, basisless, hollow spirituality and a great intention. Remember, the disciples were sent out and they tried to cast out demons, and the person that they were trying to help sprung on them and pummeled them. And that didn't go that well. Anyone in the fire department or ambulance needs to go? No? Okay. Jesus, when they came back, said, "Oh, right," and then he went and did the job, and then it was like, kind of after the after action report. Hey, Jesus, what the heck? You did the same thing that you were doing, and you went through the motions, and we got pummeled, and then you came in there and you prevailed and you released this person to a new. You did the thing. What? And he said, "Yeah, right. Well, those kind don't come out without a lot of fasting and prayer. Well, without a lot of fasting and prayer, fasting is not just practicing going without food, but it is primarily going for a ridiculous period without food. Jesus, before he started his whole deal, his 3-year campaign to demonstrate humanity at its best, get this, for 40 days, he went out away from everyone and he fasted for 40 days. He wasn't kidding around. Right from the start, he went there. Now, when people do these ordeals, whether they fast or they go, sometimes you hear about people, Indian swamis, gurus, they go off into the caves in the Himalayas and they don't have contact with other people, or they have only a few religious devotees or affiliates that occasionally bring them some supplies. But they pretty much they're in solitary confinement voluntarily. When you're in solitary confinement, it messes with your mind. There's an aspect to this going way over the top kind of spirituality that involves intentionally practicing some things that mess with your mind. Some people take shortcuts and they take mushrooms, or they lick dots that they get from who knows where behind a laundromat somewhere downtown, or they go to South America and get a ayahuasca brew with a shaman, or they do incredible amounts of repetitive meditation, so their mind cycles through in some fairly unusual or irregular ways on hyper-focusing on something, and they do something so that it reorganizes their mind. Think about the number of times you've heard people give testimony. I don't mean like in church testimony, but I suppose in some churches, not an Adventist church probably, but in some churches, you have somebody who, they had a heart attack, and then they were given CPR, and they were gone for 45 minutes, and on everyone pumping on them and using whatever. Finally, they get brought back, open heart massage or whatever. And then afterwards, they describe this, having gone through a tunnel and going to the afterlife and coming back. They have a sense of, I wanted to stay, but then I realized that I still needed to do some things, or the person I was talking with down that hole or in that room, in that white room or whatever, was telling me, it's cool, you'll be here, but not yet, it's time to go back. You got some stuff you need to, you've heard these near-death experiences, NDEs. And these near-death experiences very often change a person's mentation. They reframe their schema completely. They can have been jerk number one for the whole region before this happens, but then they become Mother Teresa afterwards. All worried about not harming a mosquito, you know? You finished? Okay, I better put some long sleeves on, but I don't want to hurt one of them. They become like super caring. They have the sense of everybody is me, even, you know, the cat. And there's something that has changed about the way they organize their perception of reality. They have a sense that what they're perceiving with their senses is just a little, almost irrelevant fraction of actual realness. That's why we're describing, like I did Cartesian coordinates on the board, started with the number line and gave you the up and down number line, and then the coming at you number line, and then the T, and I said, but what does 5 look like? And if God is infinite, if infinity really describes God, if everything about God that you and I could count, we can say, okay, there's this is how tall is God? Well, you know, infinity. Well, how old is God? Infinity. How many this, how many that, how much power does it? Infinity. How many dimensions? If we have left and right, up and down, in and out, and time that we have access to, we can detect with physics, the fifth, or we can say with string theory and mathematics, it's going to be either 9 or 11 dimensions. Those are the contenders most common in people's string theory models now, to make relativity fit with quantum mechanics. We say, well, we can infer from that there's at least 9 or there's at least 11 dimensions. How many dimensions would God have? How many dimensions would a completely unlimited entity have at its disposal? How many dimensions? Try to imagine that. The one who said before Abraham was, I am. So when I'm asking us to sort of cognitively picture reality as bigger than just what you can see around you, that science will admit as evidence, as even possibly real, except when we do quantum mechanics. But don't dare talk that way when you're talking about spirituality things, or else you'll get this, you know. So when somebody has this NDE, this near-death experience, now I'm going to tell you something really bizarre and really controversial, but there's some historic record to back it up. The practice of baptism, what do we do when we baptize? Huh?
Into water.
We put them in water. Now in Adventism, how do we put them in the water? We sprinkle a little over them. No, in fact, we make a big deal out of that. We got that from the Baptists, right? Immersion, full immersion. And Jesus was not sprinkled, right, at a synagogue or a temple. He was down at the river, right? There's evidence that the rite of baptism, and this, I believe, predates Christianity. It predates probably Judaism, but there's some indication that it's been used in mystical Christianity in the more historic sense, where what was happening when you got put under the water was experts were invoking in you a near-death experience. And usually it was only near-death, but sometimes it was a whoopsie. You know, waterboarding that everyone talked about in terms of having this 9/11 campaign on nefarious things, terror and all, where 2 administrations ago, the White House and all the king's forces and all the king's men were in favor of waterboarding, saying that it wasn't about torture. You heard that? You heard the discussion? It even came up in the last presidential campaign, people asking, well, what do you think about it? What they don't talk about publicly, and there have been serious discussions in the American Psychological Association about this. What psychologists were being unethically used for, at least that's the contention, was that what they're trying to do with people when they do the waterboarding is not for purposes of torture. Is it torturous? Yeah, I think it's torturous to think you're going to drown. To actually experience drowning and then be revived. To actually basically be killed and then brought back from biological death by drowning. Is in hopes of creating an NDE, a near-death experience, where a person's schema changes. Because once you've been down the tunnel and back in your mind, you have a different schema. Your whole value system is different. And the hope is that in that new value system, interrogators will be able to appeal to somebody who still has all the memories, but now has a different value system that's nonviolent and that would want to help prevent acts of violence. Does that make sense? No, I'm not saying that to justify treating anybody like that, because I'm against treating people like that. But that's the thought. And what was happening in ancient mystery cults and in less ancient mystery cults with baptism was to hold someone underwater until they died. And then actually bring them back. And what do we say about the watery grave? Raised to new life. Yes?
So could it be possible that this whole idea of baptism was also derived from an ancient form? Because I know that a lot of
Oh, absolutely.
because I know that a lot of things, including
Like everything.
like sanctuary services, were derived from ancient
All of it.
forms. And,
All of it.
Yeah.
The trouble is that all we see, if something is outside our circle, is everything outside of our circle, all we can see has horns and a pitchfork. You understand what fear and sort of sin sickness does even when you have a good thing like religion? It makes you think everyone else is crap. And all of the things they do couldn't possibly be God working there. Is that a little bizarreness? I'll leave you with a little bizarreness then. You contemplate and cogitate on those things, and we'll talk again on Friday.